Yeah, so for today, we have Neda presenting. Unfortunately, Emma's not able to be with us today, so it will just be the one presentation, and then we'll, see where the conversation goes after Neda has presented. We can have a fulsome discussion because I have a little bit more time. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Neda. So happy for you to be presenting with us today.
Thank you very much, Megan. Hello, everybody. My name is Neda, and I'm an international student from Iran. I'm Master of Science nursing student at Dalhousie University, and today I'm going to speak a little about my research study titled Exploring Women's Experiences Regarding Postpartum Physical Activity, a Qualitative Research Study. Dr. Megan Aston and Dr. Jane Hose are my supervisors. First of all, I would like to define the term of postpartum. As you know, postpartum period is a time immediately following birth and often without a definitive endpoint. To obtain desired health outcome, it is crucial that women are supported physically and psychologically. Currently, it is clear that recovery after birth can be promoted through body movement. During the past decades, many research studies have demonstrated the advantages of physical activity during and after pregnancy for mother and their children. Regular physical activity during postpartum can lead to better weight management, less bone loss related to lactation, less pelvic relaxation and urinary incontinence, and less gestational diabetes. According to some international guidelines, women can gradually return to physical activity 4 to 6 weeks after delivery, and following the 6-week postpartum, recommendations are the same as the adult individual. Although many women believe that participation in physical activity during the postpartum can be an appropriate decision, but most women do not engage in physical activity during this one. Two researchers show that only 14% of women during pregnancy participated in physical activity at moderate intensity level, and this rate decreased for postpartum women. Other investigators have tried to identify the barrier and enablers of physical activity during the postpartum period in order to explain the reasons behind the women's decision. Lack of time, lack of motivation and confidence, lack of access to public transportation, and childcare responsibilities are the most common enabler. Partner support, family members, and in general, social support are the most common enablers of postpartum physical activity. But other reasons may exist. Crick in 2002 believes that the society has a crucial role in developing special behaviors undertaken by individuals, and other investigators supported this idea and discussed that the female body is socially constructed in many ways. For example, in Western culture, women learn that thin is attractive and fat is unpleasant and weak. These expectations put women in secondary position of gender order and limit their social and physical potential. So there is a lot of literature about women's body as a social construction, but our knowledge about a postpartum period body is very limited. There is a lack of literature indicating how postpartum physical activity is experienced by women and influenced by dominant social and cultural practices, attitudes, and norms. So this study aims to explore the women's experiencing regarding postpartum physical activity. Because people sometimes have experiences, ideas, and feelings that do not fit with qualitative approaches, and my aim was to better understanding of women's experiences, so I prefer to choose a qualitative research. Here is my research question: what are women's experiences regarding physical activity during the postpartum period? How do postpartum women negotiate relation of power regarding postpartum physical activity? And how is postpartum physical activity socially and institutionally constructed through different discourses? Feminist post-structuralism is research methodology of this research study. And as you know, the important concepts of feminists as described by Aston 2016 include power as relational, binary opposites, regulated communications, feminist theory, language, discourse, and subjectivity, beliefs, values, and practices, subjectivity, and agency. In following slides, I will explain about them. First of all, beliefs, values, and practices. As you know, across various cultural groups, different beliefs and practices regarding postpartum ritual have evolved. People think they should follow a special behavior in the postpartum period to recover from delivery, including considering a rest period and not engaging in physical activity. For example, in some cultures, people believe giving birth leads to an imbalance in mother's body. Therefore, women must stay at home, take a rest in bed, and must follow a special behavior during the postpartum period. This period may last for 13 days. In Middle East countries, for example, 40 days rest is recommended. And due to a great number of people who immigrate to European and North American countries, we also can see these beliefs and practices in these countries. Davis 2001, in a qualitative research study, found that some Neo-Asian mothers who live in the United States believed that the postpartum period was a time that they needed a lot of rest. The meaning of this rest was bed rest, and new mothers were encouraged to avoid any activities and just feed their newborns. This period lasts between 1 to 3 months. So based on FPS, we cannot promote physical activity during the postpartum period and ignore the cultural and social beliefs of people. As another important point, in a research study carried out by some investigators in 2014, some women reported that during pregnancy, social pressure encouraged them to regain their previous body size after they had given birth. And they considered this as a distressing and fearful expectations. This expectation gives them a sense of powerless, they don't like to be in public, or some prefer to do other behavior, including taking lose weight medicine or plastic surgery, instead of engaging in physical activity. Another important concept is power as relational. Power relation determine how interactions between individuals are affected by social and institutional contexts. And binary opposites are so important. Example including men, women, physician, nurse, mentally, physically. In all of these examples, the first word is the dominant word, and its status is held by negation and oppression of the second word. FPS refuses binaries. So as a first step of the constructive process, the binary opposites should be identified and recognized. Another important concept is regulated communication. I think in regulated communication, self-monitoring is important. According to Foucault, people or group of individuals monitor their own and practices of others in ways that are related to social norms, values, beliefs, and practices. And feminist theory. Feminist theory can be viewed as a group of critical theories and methods that help us to comprehend complexity. Language, discourse, and meaning are important. Through language, things are given a value and sense. Language shaped by different discourses. So meanings change depending on discursive situations. Subjectivity and agency are important. We then define subjectivity as conscious and unconscious thought and emotion of the individual's, her sense of herself and her ways of understanding her relation to the world. How people choose to undertake an action in a specific situation is related to their agency. For many centuries, the women body has been considered as the sick or incomplete version of men during pregnancy and in need of repair during the postpartum period. So for many years, there was not any specific guideline or scientific recommendations for postpartum physical activity. Now, according to recent guidelines, women should engage in postpartum physical activity. From motherhood perspective, there are many discourses that construct meaning of new mother, for example, expected to be selfless and confident. So this study helped me to understand how women in postpartum period engage with these discourses. As I said earlier, I decided to do a qualitative research with a purposive sampling. 10 women will be required. These women should be 18 years or older. They should be in postpartum period after delivery up to 12 months. They should be able to speak English. They should be interested in being interviewed. And they should be living in Nova Scotia. Electronic poster advertising will be used as requirement strategy. And semi-structured interview will be carried out remotely by phone or online. Each interview lasts 45 minutes in a place that will be comfortable for participant and researcher. And all interviews will be audio tape recorded. Data analysis will be done at the same time with interviews and themes will be developed. For data analysis, a feminist post-structuralism discourse analysis will be used. As an open guide, 2016 will be applied. First, issues should be identified, then beliefs, values, and practices, and then discourses, relation of power, agency, and subjectivities will be identified for analysis. And in terms of ethical consideration, the ILWK Health Center Research Ethical Board approval will be received. Each participant will sign a consent form. The participants have the right to withdraw from the study up to 1 week after the interview. Participants' identification will be protected to ensure confidentiality. And in terms of knowledge translation, in this study, as soon as the research is completed and findings are established, the findings will be distributed to the IWK hospital for healthcare professionals, published in the form of a scholarly article, presented at conferences, scholarly seminars, and educational workshops, and sent for participants. Here is my references, of course, some references for this research study. And thank you for your attention. And here is my email address. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Neda. We're going to open it up to the audience, everyone who's here online with us. And just, was there anything in particular you would like to put out to the people that are here, Neda? So we can ask questions and dialogue.
I would like to listen to the ideas and who the listener think about this research study.
Hi, Neda. It's Elizabeth Keys calling, or speaking, I guess. Sorry. I think a great, great research study. I have one question about, in terms of knowledge translation or just connections. Have you thought about linking this into, or kind of doing a critique of the Canadian, Canadian body just released a 24-hour movement guidelines, and that includes a set of guidelines for women in pregnancy.
Mhm.
They don't, but then, you know, you deliver the baby and then you're done. And then you move into the adult guidelines. So I think it might be nice to, if you haven't planned, just take a look at those guidelines to see
Mhm. Mhm.
how it aligns, and maybe offer a critique, because they, you know, it's built on the
Mhm.
such quantitative evidence. It would be really nice to see it
Mhm.
did.
Yes, yes, all around the world, especially in American and North American and European countries, there are some guidelines, but sometimes these guidelines are different a little from each other. For example, in Canadian guideline, the recommendation is that the women can do exercise in postpartum, in pregnancy and postpartum, about 120 minutes per week. But about the American guidelines believe that the women can do in physical activity 150 minutes in a week. So a little differences exist between them. It's very, very nice. It's very, very useful recommendation. Yes, I can look at the Canadian guidelines.
And I had one other question. Is there a particular reason you've chosen to just recruit from Nova Scotia women?
No, there isn't any particular reason, but because I live in Nova Scotia, I study at Dalhousie University, so my preference is study in Nova Scotia. And about the after reviewing the literature, I didn't find any information about the Nova Scotia people. So I decided to work on Nova Scotia.
That's great, thank you.
You're welcome. Because I didn't find any information about the physical activity engagement in postpartum period among postpartum women in Nova Scotia. So Nova Scotia is my preference.
Hi, Neda. This is Selma.
Hi, Salma. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Thank you very much for your great presentation.
Thank you.
I just have one question about your sample. So, are you planning to interview women from certain ethnic group or mix, and how that will impact your analysis? Especially, you are looking for power and beliefs. So maybe each ethnic group will have different beliefs about physical activity or the power, or how they construct the power and something like that. So how that will impact your analysis?
In my analysis, I'm not going to separate people from each other and then analysis based on the idea that some people or immigrant women live in Nova Scotia, and maybe they learn from each other beliefs or practices. I don't know. So I'm not going to separate people from each other, for example, group from each other, and then analyze each group. I'm going to analyze as a whole group, based on FPS discourse analysis. At first, yes, I will identify the beliefs, values, practices, and then the other step. I will follow
so so are you planning to have like a mix like a sample of mixed ethnic group?
Yes, because all of them, because all of them live in Halifax, and the results, the aim of a qualitative research is not generalizing to other people, to other community, to other people, for example.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would be also great to have like a mixed group and see about how different women from different ethnicity, I mean, perceive or deal with physical activity in this period. So yeah, good luck.
Thank you very much.
So Neda, you're getting feedback. Can you hear me? It's Jean.
Yes.
Some people are writing a note saying that you're hard to hear. So just have to be careful to speak up a little bit. Sorry.
Neda, I had a question for you as well.
Yeah, hi.
Awesome presentation, and it's so cool to hear kind of what you're seeing in the literature and, you know, postpartum bodies and how that's all constructed. There's a lot of similarities, so we've got to chat another time about that. But yeah, I wanted to ask, I guess, with postpartum physical activity and thinking about how it seems that there's kind of more out there, like prenatally, like you always hear of, you know, even in Halifax, prenatal yoga or prenatal exercise classes that are meant specifically for pregnant bodies. And so I was wondering kind of what you, I guess what you perhaps are aiming to do in the interview in terms of asking postpartum individuals if there's sort of any way that, I guess, trying to identify the gaps of like, what's missing for support and information, because I feel like prenatally there's like all this stuff out there or more out there, and postpartum, as you said, it's totally dropped off. There's huge gaps. So I wanted to know a little bit more about perhaps any ways you were going about kind of finding out more about kind of that piece specifically.
Okay. Can I repeat your question? I didn't understand your question.
I guess, yeah, I was wondering kind of in, I guess more so perhaps in the interview, like with what questions you're planning to ask in the interviews that you do, if there's any questions about sort of how they might feel better supported with postpartum physical activity, or, you know, having certain resources out there or things like that.
Yes. I have provided some question in a semi-structured interview about how do women think about the term of postpartum physical activity, and what is who is the best person to support them, for example, or are they comfortable to do physical activity with their children, or they prefer to children to keep another person their children and then do engage in physical activity alone, for example. Yes, and of course I think some question may exist during the interview, or maybe appear during the interview, not now.
All right. Yeah, thank you. That sounds great. It'll be so interesting to hear your findings. So great. Thank you.
Answer? Did you give your answer?
Yes. Yeah, no, that answered my question. Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
And of course, about the information. How did they get information from the physical activity?
Yeah, I know there's quite a few of us on the call who are looking at prenatal, postpartum, all those pieces. So important.
And surprisingly, I think in some guidelines, they forgot the postpartum physical activity. Some guidelines just about the pregnancy. And they forgot to include the postpartum physical activity in their guidelines.
Neda, it's Marilyn. Thank you for your presentation. It's nice to hear about your progress.
Thank you.
Neda, thinking about your study and the stage you are at this point, what do you think will be the, what are you anticipating as your biggest challenge right now?
About the postpartum physical activity?
Just in terms of doing your research.
In my doing this research, I think COVID-19 outbreak is a big challenge, because I decided to change my interviews from face-to-face interview to online interview or interview by phone. I think if I could interview, a face-to-face interview, it will be very, very better. So I think this is a great challenge.
Yes,
for
I
this
would agree.
research study. Yes. And another challenge, I think, is a little bit difficult if I want to integrate the physical, for example, postpartum physical activity to FPS lens, or look at the postpartum physical activity from FPS lens. That's all.
Thank you, Neda.
Thank you.
And just to build on some of the questions and what people are asking about the sample, I mean, who are you going to interview? And I think this will be a great starting study just to see, you know, who's out there and how are people thinking about physical activity in different ways, but also, you know, the application of feminist post-structuralism. I mean, that's going to start to pull out some of their experiences in a particular way. So, you know, even though it's a small sample, it, you know, can go deep. But just also to say, I mean, there's just so much variability. I know you have been, you know, talking about different cultural beliefs. And right in the beginning, I know Neda and I were meeting with a physiotherapist at the IWK. So then those women who have complications after birth, you know, they're given certain exercises that they must do to heal. But, you know, hopefully the majority of people who birth don't have those complications. So physical activity is going to mean different things. So it'll be really fascinating to see all of those different meanings. So I don't know if you had anything to comment on that, Neda, or anybody else who's here today.
Hi, this is Justine. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I agree with Megan, your comment. I find that there's a lot of postpartum support for those who need extra for whatever reason, whether it's they have complications or they're high risk or whatever. But in terms of the general population, I find that there's often less guidance and recommendations, although there may be more community opportunities to do postpartum yoga, mom and baby yoga, like that type of stuff. So it will be really interesting to see if there's any differences kind of in that way as well.
Yes, because sometimes there are a lot of facilities for moms, but they don't like to, or they don't like to engage in physical activity, or they don't like to use them.
And part of the challenge that I found personally is that, like, there's often a cost associated with it, and if there are classes available, they're more like structured. You have to sign up for like a 6-week, 8-week program, but I don't know what my baby's schedule is going to be tomorrow, let alone 8 weeks from now, especially early postpartum. So I think that'll be interesting to get at as well.
And I'm interested to understand better about the women's ideas, thoughts.
Yeah. Maybe just their thoughts about their perceptions about their body. And I know, Rachel, you're in this stage right now. Oh, sorry.
I was thinking it would also be interesting because I would imagine a number of these programs have made access or have been made more accessible because of the pandemic effect right now. And I'm thinking that it would be nice if, just thinking of Justine's comments, not knowing your schedule one day to the next, let alone weeks in advance. And when you have some, if there's a lot of flexibility, that can contribute to the likelihood maybe of participation.
It's Jean. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. One of the things I was wondering about, just when we were talking, because a lot of things have gone online, I'm wondering, I know you're going to advertise in the hospital, but I'm wondering about some of the family resource centers, because they very often do sort of group kinds of activities, and every family resource center is different. But might be something to look at, just when people are talking earlier about different ethnicities and that kind of thing. You know, people coming together, they're wanting to feel comfortable. They want to feel they can trust people before they do anything. So just looking at just some other ways of recruitment that might be useful to think about. The hospital is great, and if you get all 10, then that's one thing. But just looking at other resources that are around, and a lot has gone online. I know a lot of yoga's online, a lot of physical gyms are online now. So a lot of people are doing things differently. So that might be something to look at.
Yes, it's different. It's very, very different.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear from Justine and Rachel about your recruitment experience. How quickly or how slowly, and how did you get all your participants?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in quickly before Rachel talks about her qualitative experience. So I recently did a feasibility study to recruit for Essential Coaching for Free Mother, which is an online text message program. So we used a variety of sources. We had posters in the hospital. We didn't recruit in person, just posters in the unit rooms, as well as the perinatal center. And we also did news media, as well as Facebook ads, which were very, Facebook ads and posting in groups was very, very efficient at recruiting. However, one of the challenges with that is that the sample is very much high income, white, married women. So in terms, I was talking to public health, and when we do our RCT rollout, we're going to be focusing on recruiting as well from the Family Resource Center, because that's where you're able to get a more diverse sample of people who aren't on social media. So just something to consider in terms of, if you do use social media, to do balance it out with maybe the Family Resource Center and the hospital. I'm not sure if it's like in person now that it's COVID, and I'm sure it'll change as COVID progresses and when you actually do this study. But people who deliver will be kind of from all walks of life. So yeah, that was our experience.
Yes, I'm going to recruit participants from social medias and Facebook, from social medias, Facebook website, and IWK hospital as well. Of course, family health center are very, very important for recruitment. And I think it's visible to the website.
Yeah, we recruited 88 people, like who actually enrolled in just over 2.5 months. So your sample size is not as much as that, so you should have quick success. People are really interested in talking about their postpartum experiences, I find anyway.
Yes, my sample size is 10.
Yeah, I think you'll be okay.
Yeah, and I think I would say I've used, I think, a lot of the same ways Justine said, and yeah, kind of good considerations as well that Justine mentioned, because yeah, I ended up basically doing all of mine on social media, largely over Facebook. I think a little bit we used the Mums Research Study page on Twitter as well, but a lot of it was on Facebook. So going specifically on mum groups within Halifax, there's some for Truro, there's one for Cape Breton, so I remember going through that. And asking a few pages to share it on Facebook as well. So a lot of the family resource centers, I think there are a few chapters of La Leche League that I reached out to, and they kind of had certain protocols around sharing studies. So some were able to do it and some were not for La Leche League. Yeah, I'm trying to get, there's like a Mumgasm podcast. Anyway, yeah, just a few pages on Facebook. So yeah, I ended up interviewing 11 people. So same as you, Neda, our sample sizes are, hopefully it all goes well. And yeah, I kind of heard that even during non-COVID times, I had a few colleagues who had recruited through Facebook and had great success and had been, fortunate to have quick recruitment. So hopefully it's the same for you.
Yes. Yeah. I hope.
Nate, it's Elizabeth Keys again. I just had one other question I was thinking about. What do you think about, like, will there be kind of a time or temporal element in terms of like how soon people are, you know, after delivery, people are talking about physical activity and how that might change slightly over time? I'm not sure. You're
Yes.
going to try and get them right away.
Yes, based on recommendations, women gradually should return to physical activity. They don't rush. Not recommended for women.
Right. Yeah. But do you think that their perception of physical activity or kind of the meaning of it might change over time? Like, you know, I'm just thinking like the 6-month mom might feel differently about it than someone who's, you know, has tears and is just recovering and that sort of thing. So, you know, like, I don't know, will you think about that, or what do you think of that?
I didn't think about that, about the change meaning, but I think maybe views of people or views of women may change during the months. For example, views of women in a few days after delivery may be different from 3 or 4 months. Maybe views change. But the meaning, I don't think so that the meaning of physical activity change with time. I think physical activity is physical activity in postpartum period. I don't think so. I don't know. I don't know right now.
Yeah, no, it was just a thought. I was curious what you were thinking about. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you to everyone, unless there were any more questions or comments. Great. Good. Well, thank you so much, Neda, for sharing today, and really enjoyed the participation from everyone who was able to be here. We will be posting this up on the web for everyone to go back and review, or new people to come and look at it. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.